The flight began uneventfully, but a single red cap triggered a series of events that spiraled out of control. She thought she had the upper hand, putting a fellow passenger in their place, unaware that this very passenger held the power to decide whether she'd keep her seat at all. She had just made her move, but now the stakes were higher than ever. Let's see how it all unfolds. In the bustling cabin of a morning flight from New York to Los Angeles, everything seemed routine until Emma Thompson, a sharp and assertive flight attendant, noticed something that stopped her in her tracks. Among the sea of passengers settling into their seats, one man stood out not because of his demeanor, which was calm and composed, but because of the bold red "Make America Great Again" hat perched on his head. To Emma, the hat wasn't just an accessory, it represented a polarizing symbol that she couldn't ignore. Her principles, deeply ingrained and unapologetic, stirred as she passed by the man, who appeared oblivious to the silent storm brewing around him. As Emma handed out pre-flight drinks, her focus kept returning to the man and his hat. The longer she thought about it, the more it fueled her determination to act. For her, the hat wasn't just fabric and thread, it was a statement that clashed with her sense of what was acceptable. Unwilling to let it slide, Emma resolved to confront the passenger, a decision that would set off a cascade of unforeseen events and challenges she never anticipated. Emma Thompson, known for her no-nonsense demeanor, approached the man with a tray in hand, her tone laced with thinly veiled sarcasm. "Nice choice of accessory," she remarked loudly, ensuring nearby passengers could hear. Trying to make a statement, the man, a middle-aged professional with a calm demeanor, glanced up briefly. He offered a polite but distant smile and replied simply, "It's just a hat," before returning to his magazine. Emma's lips pressed into a thin line as frustration simmered within her. Just a hat, she thought, feeling the audacity of his indifference. She walked back to the galley, venting her frustration to her colleagues. "Can you believe this guy? Parading around in that hat like it's no big deal. Do you know how offensive that is to people?" While one senior attendant tried to de-escalate the situation, urging Emma to let it go, her resolve only hardened. "We have rules about offensive behavior," she insisted. "That hat is offensive, end of discussion." Determined to take action, Emma marched back down the aisle, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Stopping in front of the man, she crossed her arms and said firmly, "Sir, your hat is causing discomfort to other passengers. I'm going to have to ask you to remove it." The man calmly closed his magazine and looked up, his voice steady as he replied, "Thank you for your concern, but I'll keep it on." His calm defiance only fueled Emma's determination as she pressed on, declaring that his behavior violated airline policy and insisting he remove the hat or leave the flight. The tension in the cabin grew thick as passengers murmured, watching the scene unfold. The passenger, remaining composed despite Emma Thompson's unwavering stance, listened silently as she reiterated her demand. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the growing tension in the cabin, where murmurs and wide-eyed glances were spreading among the other passengers. After a moment of consideration, he placed his magazine neatly on the tray table, stood up, and began collecting his belongings with deliberate calm. Emma stood firm, watching him intently as he prepared to leave, her arms crossed and her expression resolute. This is the right thing to do, she reassured herself, clinging to her conviction that she was upholding the airline standards and protecting the comfort of the other passengers. As the man walked toward the exit without uttering a single word of protest or anger, his composed demeanor left an unsettling impression. He wasn't defeated or apologetic, in fact, he seemed unaffected, which only deepened the hollowness of Emma's perceived victory. As the cabin door closed behind him, Emma felt a flicker of doubt, though she quickly dismissed it. She had enforced the rules, after all. Her actions, in her mind, were justified and necessary to maintain order. Yet, a part of her couldn't shake the nagging discomfort left by the man's quiet composure. It was as though he had retained the upper hand simply by refusing to engage. Even as Emma resumed her duties, standing tall and maintaining her professional poise, she couldn't fully escape the unsettling feeling that her victory had come at a cost she hadn't anticipated. As the flight landed smoothly in Los Angeles, Emma Thompson felt a sense of accomplishment. She believed she had stood up for what was right, ensuring a comfortable environment for the passengers. Confident in her actions, she held her head high, while helping with final preparations as passengers began disembarking. However, her confidence wavered the moment she noticed Mark Donovan, the airline's chief operating officer, waiting just outside the jet bridge. Tall, impeccably dressed, and exuding authority, Mark's expression was unreadable but unmistakably serious. Emma's steps faltered slightly as he approached her, his tone curt and direct. "Emma, we need to talk," he said without preamble, gesturing for her to follow him. Curiosity mixed with unease as she walked behind him, leaving the bustling terminal behind. Mark led her to a private office, the sterile environment amplifying the tension. Once the door closed, he wasted no time. "Do you know who you removed from the flight today?" he asked, his tone ice cold. Emma straightened, trying to maintain her composure. "A disruptive passenger," she replied confidently. "He was violating policy by wearing inappropriate attire." Mark's sharp gaze didn't waver as he dropped a file onto the table. "That disruptive passenger, Emma, is Jacob Randolph," he said slowly, each word hitting like a hammer. "He owns this airline." Emma's breath caught, her confidence evaporating in an instant. The gravity of her actions hit her like turbulence, leaving her speechless as Mark's words sank in. Emma sat stiffly in the sterile office as Mark Donovan fixed her with a piercing glare. His voice was calm but laced with unmistakable disappointment as he began. "Emma, do you realize the magnitude of what you've done?" he asked, his words deliberate and measured. "Your actions today have put this airline in a precarious position." Emma tried to defend herself, her tone edged with defiance. "I was ensuring the comfort of our passengers." His hat was offensive and inappropriate, but Mark raised a hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. "No," he said sharply, his voice dropping a notch. "What you did was let your personal beliefs override your professionalism. That man wasn't disruptive. He wasn't breaking any rules. You were the one who created a scene." The weight of his words settled heavily in the room, leaving Emma grappling with the reality of her actions. "Because of your decision." Mark continued, "We're now dealing with an internal crisis that could have been avoided entirely. You allowed your judgment to jeopardize not just your reputation, but the reputation of the company." Emma opened her mouth to respond, but quickly closed it, realizing she had no defense. The authority in Mark's voice left no room for argument. She felt the walls closing in as he delivered his final admonition. "This isn't just about you, Emma. It's about the values this airline stands for, and today you failed to uphold them." Emma sat nervously across from Jacob Randolph, the owner of the airline, in a sleek, minimalist office that exuded authority and calm. Jacob, dressed sharply in a tailored navy suit, studied her with an expression that was unreadable, neither angry nor sympathetic, but intensely focused. The silence in the room was deafening as he leaned back slightly in his chair and gestured for her to speak. Gathering her courage, Emma began explaining herself. Her words came out in a hurried, jumbled attempt to justify her actions. She insisted that she had acted in the best interest of the passengers, claiming the hat was creating discomfort and could have escalated tensions. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she said, her voice tinged with desperation. Jacob listened intently, his hands folded on the table, never interrupting. When she finished, her words trailing off, he leaned forward slightly. His voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Emma," he began, "do you know why I sometimes choose to fly in economy class?" She shook her head, unsure where he was going. "It's to see firsthand how our passengers are treated by the people on the front lines, our employees. Today, I got a very clear picture." Her stomach sank as he continued. "You made assumptions about me based on a hat. You didn't ask me why I was wearing it. You didn't consider that I was sitting quietly, bothering no one. Instead, you decided that your personal beliefs gave you the right to humiliate a passenger publicly. In doing so, you contradicted everything this airline stands for: respect, professionalism, and unbiased service." Emma tried to interject, but Jacob raised a hand, silencing her. "This company has built its reputation on treating every passenger with dignity, no matter who they are or what they believe. Today, you failed to uphold that standard. This wasn't just poor judgment, it was a failure to embody our core values." As the conversation reached a tense pause, Jacob Randolph leaned back in his chair, his piercing gaze never leaving Emma. After a moment, he broke the silence, his voice steady but firm. "Emma, here's where we stand," he said. "You've put this company in a difficult position, and your actions today have jeopardized not only your career but also the trust we work hard to build with our passengers." Emma sat frozen, her mind racing as Jacob continued. "You have two options," he said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "Option one, you can resign immediately. No questions asked, no further involvement. You walk away today, and we consider the matter closed." He paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. Option two. He went on, leaning forward slightly, is that you stay but only under strict conditions. You will complete a comprehensive training program focused on professional ethics and customer relations. And let me make one thing very clear. I will be monitoring your progress personally. There will be no room for error. This is your last chance. The finality of his words hung heavily in the room, and Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. Resigning would mean admitting defeat, walking away with her reputation tarnished. Staying meant facing the consequences and working to rebuild the trust she had shattered. After a moment of silence, she finally spoke, her voice trembling. I'll take the training, she said, her words barely above a whisper. Jacob nodded once, his expression unreadable. Good, he replied. But make no mistake, there are no second chances after this. Emma sat in silence, the weight of Jacob Randolph's words pressing heavily on her. The magnitude of her mistake was clear. She had jeopardized not only her career but also the values the airline stood for. Resigning would have been the easier option, a way to escape the consequences of her actions. But deep down, Emma knew she couldn't walk away. She had to face what she had done and take responsibility. Taking a deep breath, she looked up at Jacob and said, her voice steady despite her nerves, I'll take the training. The room seemed to grow quieter as the words settled. Jacob nodded, his expression calm but serious. Good, he said. But remember, this is your last chance. There will be no room for mistakes. As she left the office, Emma resolved to use this opportunity to grow. She understood the gravity of her actions and vowed to rebuild the professionalism and respect she had let slip. This was her chance to make things right. As Emma walked out of the building, the reality of the day's events weighed heavily on her. A single decision, fueled by personal judgment, had nearly cost her everything she'd worked for. The confrontation over something as simple as a hat had escalated into a humbling lesson about professionalism, restraint, and respect. While relieved to have another chance, Emma knew she had to change. This incident wasn't just a mistake, it was a wake-up call that reminded her of the responsibility she carried in her role.